Welcome to the Sober and Happy podcast, where we talk about all things recovery related, how to navigate the challenges we'll face along the way on our journey towards our best lives, and how we can go from living a life of simply just being sober to a life where we're both sober and happy. First off, Happy New Year. January is here, and that means it's time for resolutions and fresh starts. For a lot of people, it's also time for Dry January, which is a commitment to giving up alcohol for the first 31 days of the year. But is Dry January a good idea? Can it be a meaningful step towards lasting change, or is it just a quick fix that leads back to old habits? Today we're going to dive deep into this question. We'll talk about the pros and cons and how to make the most out of this challenge if you decide to take it on. So buckle up, this is going to be a great episode. Welcome back. Dry January has become a global phenomenon. Millions of people use it as a way to hit the reset button after the holidays. Some see it as a health challenge, others as a way to prove something to themselves or their loved ones. But here's the thing, it all comes down to why you're doing it and what you hope to gain. Let me share a story from last year, but before starting, I want to share something about me that's become true in my life. I have what I like to jokingly call annoying drunk guy karma. When I used to drink, I possessed every annoying drunk quality you could have. I was a close talker, I talked way too loud, I constantly repeated myself, and once I got enough alcohol in me, I was the huggy, I love you bro guy. Ever since I got sober though, it seems like any time I go to a place where alcohol is present, the most annoying drunk guy in the place could spot me from across the room and then decide that I am his new best friend. This has happened to me so many times that I just laugh about it now, and I figure that I'm just getting to experience the other side of what so many people had to tolerate with me for all those years that I was a drunk. So when I went on a New Year's cruise last year for a friend's wedding, it was no surprise that on day one, I met a guy in his early 30s who was, to put it bluntly, obliterated the entire time. We're talking about someone who spent 4 days on a full-on alcohol bender. Basically, he was the version of me that would have been on that cruise if I was still drinking. From the moment we met, he had his arm around me, telling me how much he loved me. And for the rest of the cruise, no matter where I went on the ship, I could count on running into my new friend. One day, he plopped down on the deck next to me while I was reading. After some slurred rambling from him, I think he realized he was making no sense and said, "Oh man, I'm so sorry, I'm so drunk." To make up for it, he offered me a drink. I politely declined, and I reminded him that I no longer drink. That's when his tone shifted. He apologized for forgetting and for being so drunk and told me that he knows he drinks too much sometimes. He told me he was planning to do Dry January starting the moment the cruise ended. He mentioned that people in his life had become concerned about his drinking and challenged whether or not he could stop drinking, and he was planning on doing Dry January to prove them wrong. Curious, I asked what his plans for February 1st were. He grinned and said, "Oh, I got a 4-day weekend planned to get smashed." And there it was. For him, Dry January wasn't about change. It was about proving something to others. His family and friends who thought he had a problem. He saw it as a way to justify going back to drinking as much as he wanted without judgment. This highlights one of the biggest challenges with Dry January. If your plan ends with a predetermined relapse date, you're not really addressing your relationship with alcohol. But let's also acknowledge the other side of the coin. Dry January isn't inherently good or bad, it's just a tool. And like any tool, its effectiveness depends on how you use it. For some people, it's a great opportunity to reassess their habits. Maybe you've been drinking a little more than you like and you're curious to see how you feel without it. Maybe you've been relying on alcohol to de-stress and you want to explore other coping mechanisms. And that's one of the benefits of Dry January. It creates a structured opportunity to experiment with sobriety. Let me give you another example. A friend of mine, Sarah, did Dry January. She's not what you'd call a heavy drinker, but she noticed she was reaching for a glass of wine almost every night to wind down and was getting a little concerned that she might be heading down the wrong path towards dependence. She also realized that by using alcohol as the quick and easy solution for winding down, that she also stopped meditating, which was what she previously used for relaxation. By the end of the month, she realized that she didn't need alcohol to relax. She started meditating again instead, and it made a huge difference in her overall stress levels. She realized she was using alcohol as her crutch at the end of the day, and that it was just that, a crutch, and she had much better results when she started back to her regular meditation practice. So for people like Sarah, dry January could be a great reset, but the key is to go beyond just abstaining for 31 days. She explored deeper the reasons she was using alcohol nightly and instead went back to an effective practice as she had stopped. While dry January was effective for my friend, we need to talk about some of the potential downsides because they're important to consider too. One of the biggest traps people fall into is treating dry January like a diet cleanse. You cut something out for a short period, but then go right back to old habits once the challenge is over. If you know anybody who has done a weight loss challenge at a gym, and I have done many, you know that most of those people not only don't keep the weight off, but they usually put more back on after the challenge is over. If treated the same way, dry January could have a similar result. I like to call this the yo-yo effect of sobriety. You might feel great during January, but if February becomes a free-for-all, you're not making any lasting progress. In fact, for some people, this back and forth can actually reinforce their reliance on alcohol. Another pitfall is the social pressure. Let's face it, alcohol is deeply ingrained in our culture. If you're someone who relies on drinking to fit in or to navigate social situations, dry January might feel isolating. That's why it is important to have a plan for those moments. If you're at a party and everyone's drinking, what's your go-to strategy? Maybe it's bringing your own non-alcoholic options or having a friend who knows what you're doing and can help you stay accountable. And finally, there's the risk of using dry January as a way to prove you don't have a problem. If you're doing this challenge to silence the voices of concern in your life, you might miss an opportunity to really examine whether alcohol is serving you or not. So how do you make dry January work for you? Let me offer a few tips. First, use the time to evaluate your relationship with alcohol. Taking a break from alcohol, even just for a month, can reveal more than you might expect about your habits and how much alcohol has become part of your daily life. Start by asking yourself, how often am I thinking about drinking or not drinking this month? This mental preoccupation can be a strong indicator of dependence. For example, if you're finding that every social invitation makes you feel uneasy or awkward because it involves alcohol, that's worth exploring. You might also notice physical or emotional withdrawal symptoms like irritability, trouble sleeping, or feeling like something is missing. Use this awareness to dig deeper. Write down your observations daily so you could look for patterns and pinpoint where alcohol has been playing a larger role than you realized. At the end of the month, rank how much you've missed drinking on a scale of 1 to 10. If it's a high number, ask yourself why and what that says about your relationship with alcohol. Tip number 2, don't just sit around simply not drinking. The biggest misconception about sobriety and challenges like dry January is that it's just about abstaining. Let me tell you, doing nothing is a recipe for boredom and frustration. Instead, use this month as a mini exploration phase. Dig up that list of things you've been putting off or meaning to try. For instance, if there's a hobby you've been curious about, like learning guitar, painting, or photography, dive into it now. If you're someone who thrives on social interaction, this is a great time to challenge yourself by attending events where alcohol isn't the focal point. Check out local meetups, hiking groups, or art workshops. You might discover you enjoy connecting with others more than you thought, and without the haze of alcohol. Tip number 3, challenge your beliefs about what living sober looks like. Many people think sobriety is dull because they associate it with loss. The loss of fun, the loss of relaxation, or even the loss of social standing. But what if it's not about loss? What if it's about rediscovery? Use dry January to flip the script. Ask yourself, what have I gained this month? For example, have you slept better, felt sharper at work, saved money? Each benefit you uncover is a win. Try this as an exercise. Imagine what February 1st will look like if you don't start drinking again. What will you do with the extra energy, clarity, money, and time that you've discovered? Start building a mental picture of a life you're excited to wake up to, one where alcohol isn't the main character. Tip 4. Journal every day. Journaling doesn't have to be complicated or time-consuming. Even a few minutes a day can make a big difference. Start with prompts like, what surprised me the most about today without alcohol? What emotions came up and how did I handle them? What would I say to myself if I were coaching me through this month? For example, if you had a tough day at work and your instinct was to pour a drink, write about what you choose to do instead. Maybe you went for a walk, called a friend, or just sat with the discomfort. Documenting these moments could help you build a toolkit for future challenges. The last tip is to reevaluate your month before ending the challenge. The end of Dry January isn't just a finish line. It's a chance to reflect and make intentional choices about what comes next. Ask yourself, what did I enjoy about not drinking? Were there moments I missed? If so, why? What concerns about my drinking led me to try Dry January in the first place? Look for evidence in your journal or mental notes. Did you feel more present with your family? Did your mood or energy improve? Did you achieve something you've been putting off? Here's the big question to end the month on. What do I really want February and beyond to look like? This is where you really want to get honest with yourself, whether or not your plans are to stay sober after the challenge is over. Lastly, I want to give you one bonus tip. Find community support. While January could be a solo challenge, it doesn't have to be. Seek out others who are on a similar path. Join online forums or local groups where you could share experiences and exchange advice. Being part of a community creates accountability and provides fresh ideas for staying motivated. Plus, it's a reminder that you're not alone. Many people are rethinking their relationship with alcohol and their strength in that shared journey. If you're looking for a place for that sense of community, we've built a great one that you could find at facebook.com/groups/soberandhappy. I'll also include a link to it in the show notes. As we wrap up this episode, I want to emphasize the importance of using this month as a springboard for the future. So here's my challenge for you this week. Whether you're doing Dry January or not, spend some time reflecting on your relationship with alcohol. Write down 3 things you've learned about yourself, good, bad, or neutral. And if you're really enjoying the benefits of sobriety, think about what it would look like if you kept going beyond just this challenge. Thank you for listening to this episode, and I hope you're enjoying the podcast. If you are, please do me a favor, grab your phone and text one person who you think might benefit from listening to the podcast. That would mean the world to me. New episodes come out each Friday, so I look forward to connecting with you next week. And as always, thank you so much for listening, and keep living sober and happy.